Hi, we're on page 3 of Geometry Semester 1 Review. First question here asks us to sketch an altitude of a triangle. Well, an altitude is going to go from the vertice to the opposite side, and it has to be perpendicular to it. So that would be an altitude. If I was going to do an altitude to this side, I would probably have to go similar, so it gets to be a right angle there. And over here it would look like that. A median is from the midpoint to the opposite vertex. So it would look like that. Midpoint from over here would look like that. If I'm going to rewrite the statement in if-then form, all monkeys have tails, I would say if an animal is a monkey, then it has a tail. For question 35, we're going to decide whether those links are appropriate to make a triangle. We know that the two shorter sides have to add up to greater than the longest side. So 5 plus 7 is 12, which is greater than that, so that would be a yes. 2 plus 6 is 8, which is not greater than that one, so that's a no. And 1 plus 1 equals is not greater than, so that one's also a no. In question 36, we're to determine if these are an always, sometimes, never statement. Opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. That's an always. Opposite angles of a parallelogram are supplementary. That's a sometimes. That's only true when they are right angles. Diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. That's always. Diagonals of a parallelogram are congruent. Well, the only time that they're congruent is when they're a rectangle or square, so that's a sometimes. Opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. That's always. Down here on 37, we're to determine if we can prove these two triangles are congruent. So we're going to see here, if we have this side is congruent and parallel to this side, we know that this angle and this angle have to be congruent by alternate interior angles. This side here is a shared side by those, so by the reflective property, they're congruent to each other. So I know that if I take this by side, angle, side, it's going to be congruent to that one by side, angle, side. So I know this is a side, angle, side, and yes, it is. But what triangles are congruent? Well, if we have DCR, we know that would be congruent to ARC. In this one, we're to determine if we can prove them congruent. Again, we have parallel. That's what those triangles mean. So I have vertical angles here. I have alternate interior angles there. So I know that these two triangles have to be congruent by angle, side, angle. So angle, side, angle. And then LAR would be congruent to triangle NSR. On letter C here, same kind of question here. We have the parallel and congruent. We have the shared side there. We have the alternate interior angles there. So we have side, angle, side. And triangle ABC would be congruent to triangle DCB. For question number 38, the school has a grass field that is 600 meters by 240 meters. They decide to pave a section that is 30 by 63 for kickball diamonds and basketball courts. How much grass area would be left over? Well, if I multiply this to get the area, 600 times 240 equals, I get 144,000 square meters for that area. If I take 30 times 63, I get 1,890 square meters for that area. So how much grass is left over? Well, I'm going to subtract those to get how much grass is left over. and I get 142,110 square meters. If the school wanted to fence the paved area, how many meters of fencing would they need? We know that if you're going to fence around it, that would be its perimeter, so I would take 30 plus 63 plus 30 plus 63, which gives me 186 meters. If the fence cost $32.50 per meter, how much would the fence cost? Well, I'm going to take 186 meters times 32.50, and I get $6,045 for the cost of the fence. For question 39, decide whether each line below is parallel, perpendicular, or neither to this one that has a slope of negative 1/3. Well, if it has a slope of 1/3, they're not opposite reciprocals. They're opposite, so I'm going to go with neither on that one. A -3 slope would be neither parallel or perpendicular. 3, that would have a perpendicular slope because they are opposite reciprocals. This one's also an opposite reciprocal. Remember, all we're looking at is that slope number. And for letter E here, if it has a -1/3 and a -1/3, that would be parallel. For question 40, we're going to find the area of the shape below. Well, it's an odd shape, so we have to cut it into two. If I take and put this down here, then I have two trapezoids. To find the area of two trapezoids, we have to add the two bases together, 24 plus 32, divide that by 2, and then multiply that by the height of that trapezoid. And the height is the distance between the two bases. If I do that, I get 56 divided by 2 is 28. 28 times 18 gives me 504. And then the second part of that would be to do the same thing with this other trapezoid. So I'm going to take 32 plus 12 divided by 2, and then I'm going to multiply that by 16. 32 plus 12 is 44. 44 divided by 2 is 22 times 16. I get 352. We'll add those together to get 856 square units.